Hiya. Today we're going to talk about where the complexity is coming from, because a lot of people I speak to say, well, we're feeling overwhelmed, our batteries are running low, we're really overworked, and yet there doesn't seem to be any productivity. And I don't mean that people aren't productive. What I mean is there doesn't seem to be any outcomes that are being met, or savings that are being met by projects that we're running. So where does it go wrong? Where does it go wrong? And it's important that you understand where the complexity is coming from in order to help you resolve the basics that you need to get, the building blocks that you need to get right within an organization. So really what has happened is, over time, we are moving from a time which was very flat, a time that was very stable, to a time which is highly volatile, complex, uncertain, ambiguous. I'm sure you've all heard of the terminology VUCA. Well, actually, and I've just realised you might not be able to see that as well as I can, so let me take a bigger. So really the complexity that we're seeing today is nothing to do with the organisations in which we find ourselves. The complexity is coming from an interplay between the environment and the organisation. So when we change our organisations, we need to take into account the environment in which the organisation exists, because without having that overview, and this is about governance, by the way, this is about boards and senior leaders understanding that they need to change their governance. So let me carry on with this. We've gone from a time of stability to a time of high complexity. And really, if you think about what we built at times of stability in relation to organizations, we built quite complex governance structures around organizations, which today we call hierarchies. When you build an organization that has hierarchy in a stable time, actually that hierarchy is just what is needed in order to answer the stability of the environment in which it existed. So hierarchies up until recently actually have been very successful governance structures for organizations. But something has changed, something has dramatically changed, and it's come in a number of formats. And as governance boards, you have to understand, and as senior leaders, you have to understand where those pressures and those complexities have come from, because they're not actually created within your organization, they're created outside of your organization. They're an environment in which the organization exists. And that's important to understand. So when we went through the recession in 2007, 2008, it added to the complexity of the environment. Technology, since the 1980s, technology has gone through the roof. That's adding to the complexity of the environment. Historically speaking, since the 40s, 50s, women came into the workplace. That has changed the environment of, that's changed the way in the demographics in which the organization exists. So there's lots and lots of different things that over a period of 50, 60 years has added to the complexity of the environment in which industrial age organizations are now finding themselves. And those organizations, as I said, are built around the governance model called hierarchy. which worked very well in times of stability. Now, hierarchies are highly complex in the way that they make decisions. So in terms of their governance, because governance is about decision making, it's setting the infrastructure in how decisions are made within your organization. When you have an environment in which organizations or people within the organizations need to find permission up the ladder to do certain activities, what you get on the way back is standardization. At time of stability, that was a perfect model of decision making because it meant that there was consistency, efficiency, and great productivity within the organization. Things have changed drastically. As you can see, we have moved to an area of huge complexity, and I mean complexity that we have never experienced before. The important thing for leaders today is to recognize the difference between the leadership style that was needed at times of stability and the leadership that is needed at times of complexity, because there is a difference. At times of stability, we did not have to question our governance models because they were working well for us. So the leadership at times of stability was purely transactional in relation to making efficiencies within the organization. What is changing quite significantly is the need for leaders in a time of complexity to become transformational or innovation leadership. You need to be able to move quicker than the environment sets around you. At times of stability, we had continuous improvement, which allowed us to make, continuous improvement. But as you can see, there's little feedback loops of continuous improvement. If we carry those on, actually, at times of complexity, they do not keep up with the rate of change. So it then adds to the complexity and the tensions within your organization because people feel like they're carrying on with improvement, but actually they're falling behind in relation to the complexity of the environment. Right? And that is very demoralizing because you're so busy doing the doing and yet you don't see the results. So there's two things, there's more than two things that need to change, but I want to just talk about two things in this video. The first one is your governance model. Your hierarchical structure worked really well at times of stability. In times of high complexity, what we need to do is we need to simplify organizations, because complexity with complexity actually creates chaos, while stability, complexity and simplicity would create a more stabilizing effect within your organization. So what do we mean by changing your business models or simplifying your business models? We actually mean that you need to look at ways in which you can flatten the decision-making structure, because your decisions need to be made quicker rather than slower than before, because as you can see, you need to keep up with the rate of change. So how do you make decisions quicker in an organization? Well, you put strategists, planners and deliverers in one team, right? At the moment, in a hierarchy, usually the top of the organization has the strategic overview, then you've got the middle managers who are responsible for planning, and then you've got the delivery, the guys delivering the service at the bottom of the pyramid. And as I said, at times of stability, that worked really well because it set a great structure for efficiencies. as you can see today, by the time a decision has gone up to the top of the organization, it has become such a big decision with such high risks to it that actually, you're creating more problems than it's worth working on, really, because you can't keep up. You're just managing to continuously improve, but the improvement is not quick enough. So what needs to happen? In relation to your business models, you need to flatten the organization, not remove strategy, planning, or delivery. Actually, you need to create environments in which governance, strategy, planners and deliverers all work as one. Because only then can you make decisions quick enough for the organization to keep up. Now, how do you create teams with strategists, planners, and deliverers? We are making one assumption here, and we're making an assumption about the people that work for us, potentially. When you work in an organization, an old, the industrial age organization, the hierarchical organization, the assumption is that people work themselves up the ladder, and that the person at the top is smarter than maybe the person at the bottom. The truth is that as part of this complexity, what we've actually seen is that people now have learning in the palm of their hands in relation to their mobile phones, their laptops, and so on and so on. The internet has opened up the pool of knowledge to everybody. So actually, everybody has the potential to be as clever as the next, or as smart as the next person. So when we say we still need different roles in terms of strategy, planning, and delivery, actually what we're making the assumption about is that those three functions cannot be held by one person, or by two people, or by a small team of people. The reality is you will be able to find those three functions in one or two people, right? So you don't have to build big teams in order to make some changes. Actually, on the contrary, it's healthy to create smaller teams of decision makers where you can make quicker decisions about things that don't then have to go up the ladder and back down again. So it is about creating teams of diversity, right? So in relation to your governance, your hierarchy, you need to relook at your governance structure, which is hierarchy, in order to make sure that your decision-making processes keep up with that rate of change. And the only way you can do that is through delegated power or delegated leadership. You have to tap into the leadership that exists in your organization and understand that actually every single person in your organization has the potential to be the next leader. It has the potential to lead on decisions for you, for your organization. Now that takes a lot of delegation of power from the top to the bottom, which is scary, I understand, because people think that if you delegate the power, you just create chaos because people don't know where they're traveling to. Well, actually, there is still a very important role for the top of the organization in helping the workforce to understand the bigger picture. That bigger picture does not come necessarily with a point on the horizon. Actually, it's better not for it to be a point at the horizon. Why do I say that? Because if a CEO makes a decision and says that's the point we're heading to on the horizon at times of uncertainty, there is a lot of responsibility sitting on that CEO's shoulders to say that's exactly the point we're heading for. The world is far too uncertain for us to pinpoint one dot on the map. The reality of the world is, is that at the moment we need to explore a number of avenues to different spots on the horizon, because if we don't, we create a plan A without a plan B, and that can be traumatic for any organization. And it can, when you head for that one point on the horizon, that one point might be the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, right? But if the leader says that's where we're heading and that's where we're heading, and the workforce unquestionably follows the leader, what you get is plan A, and plan B is you end up at the bottom of the sea. Okay, so your governance models, your governance structure has to change in today's world. You cannot continue with that. The practices, continuous development, continuous improvement is no longer sufficient. Your governance models equally have to set the environment in which people can innovate, and people can work together, and people can connect with one another very easily. Unfortunately, within organizations such as hierarchies, we still have a lot of policies and processes and practices that actually stop that actually encourage silo working. And I speak to so many CEOs and senior managers who say, it's interesting because the top of the organization are working well together, and we seem to be doing a lot of innovative practice. But when we get further down the hierarchy, what we find is people struggle to work together. Well, actually, there's a very good reason for that, because hierarchies were not built for anything other than functional working. And functional working is something that really may help in the manufacturing world, but actually it doesn't work in organizations that work with people, whether that's working with people inside the organization or working people outside of the organization. The complexity equally around the hierarchy is that hierarchical organizations are commercially minded. What I mean by that is that a lot of the energy goes to the internal efficiencies, internal efficiencies that require transactional activities for improvement. When I talk about transformational leadership in times of complexity, actually transformational leadership is a lot more outside focused. It's looking outwards. It's looking at partnerships. It's looking at working with other people. It's making those connections at the edges that actually improves your ability to innovate. It's working together with your customers. It's working together with your investors. It's working together with communities. It's working together with other businesses. The one thing that I think is the most important thing in relation to simplifying your governance is to start small, or to think small. Slightly different. To think small. As I said earlier, the smaller you can make decision-making teams at the front line, which includes your strategy, your planning, and your delivery, the quicker you make decisions, the more you can innovate. So your governance needs to be built on small teams of decision makers, small project teams that can make decisions very quickly, very easily for the benefit of the customers. And if you work in the public sector, that actually needs to go a step further, because a lot of the public sector organizations are talking about co-creation. And co-creation is not just working with your front line, actually it is working with the citizens that you are serving as a public sector in order to co-create solutions for individuals. But again, here too, this is about not thinking big, but actually thinking minute, because a lot of the initiatives that are being imposed on local government, a lot of them mention person-centeredness and personalization. The co-creation of solutions actually needs to be personalized to each individual that you work with. Now, that is difficult to achieve in an organization that is so complex that you create a dog with three heads, because you're not only answering to the customer, you're answering to your manager, and you're answering to the top of the organization, and potentially you have a fourth head because you might be answering to a governance board who's monitoring your every move. So you create too complex an environment for you to be able to stay on top of what you're trying to do. The more you can simplify your organization with minimal layers and minimal complexity around your practices and your processes, the quicker decisions can be made, the smaller risks remain, and the better your organization will survive for the future.